Let's sit tall. Close the eyes. Take a nice breath in and a nice breath out. And with each breath that you take, just take an inventory of how you feel. Take an inventory of your physical body, the sensations that are present, and try not to judge anything that you witness. Just notice. Be aware. Notice any thoughts that are going through the mind. Notice yourself noticing. And as you enter with each breath more deeply into the situation of the witness, notice what that does to you. Notice the overall changes that occur. Do you feel more present, more peaceful? Less present, less peaceful? There's no right or wrong. It's just being aware of what is. So if paying attention on purpose, if witnessing causes you a little bit of distress initially, so be it. Just know this too shall change. The same can be said for the opposite also. If initially entering more deeply into the situation of the witness brings you comfort, don't be attached. This too will change. Notice the ebbs and the flows. Notice yourself noticing. And notice what it does to you. And draw the hands together in front of the heart. And we'll begin with one Om and the invocation mantras. Join me if you know them. Taking a breath in for Om. Om. Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Ganana Antva Ganapati Gum Havamahe Kavin Kavinam Upamashravastamam Jesta Rajam Brahmanan Brahmanaspata Anashrinvanu Basidha Sadhanam Mahaganapataye Namaha Prano Devi Saraswati Vajebhir Vajinivati Dhinama Vitriyavatu Ano Devo Brahataf Parvata Da Saraswati Ajata Gantu Yagnyam Havan Devi Jujushana Gritachi Shagmam Novacha Mushati Shrinotu Vagdevyai Namaha. And gently release the hands down and flutter the eyes open. And so today I thought we'd talk a little bit about witnessing. And then we'll talk a little bit about why. Why bother being a witness? Shouldn't we be more invested in the push and pull of life and the desires and the avoidances and the excitement of it all? Why would we want to step back and just get a bigger view of everything? So in the tradition, the witness is called Sakshi, S-A-K-S-I or S-A-K-S-H-I, Sakshi. And to be a witness means, in our lingo, in our language, we could say that to be a witness means to be an uninvolved viewer, somebody who is seeing but is not involved. And I would say that that's pretty much initially the same thing that the Sakshi is the one who sees but is not getting tangled up in the drama of it all. And that's really hard. It's easy if we're watching someone else. If we're it's not easy there either though, because you ever go to I like going to the airport. I go to the airport a lot, but I do. It's a good thing I like it, right? I like going to the airport because I sit there and I watch. I just watch. I watch people come and go. I watch people in their rush, and I watch the ones who are really slow and just kind of in the moment, And what I love about that practice when I'm at the airport is it gives me an opportunity to recognize the judgments and the tendency toward judgmentalism that is still present, but also when it's not, when I can just see and appreciate the seeing. And it's taken a lot of years to say that, there's more moments of not judging as I'm sitting there watching than there used to be. There's more moments of non-judgmentalism when I sit in the airport watching people come and go than what there used to be. There's not zero. It's not like there's no moments of judgment. They're still there, Like you see somebody in a beautiful dress, and you're like, oh, that color's so amazing. That's a judgment. You see somebody in a horrendous outfit, you're like, oh man, did they not look in the mirror? That's a judgment, So those kinds of thoughts are totally still there, But more and more and more is just a simple appreciation. An appreciation for the fact that each and every one of these people are coming from somewhere, going to somewhere, and have had experience upon experience upon experience between these two places, and will continue to. And those experiences, past, present, and the ones that are yet to happen, are what are formulating that person's worldview, self-view, ability to walk slower or faster, necessity to run, necessity to sit down and take a moment because they've been running. They're at the airport. Everybody runs at the airport, right? So more and more and more, what I find replaces the tendency to look with these little judgments that we all judge is the tendency to look and appreciate the struggle. We all have the struggle, and yet we don't talk about it. We just say, well, it's day-to-day living, it's what it is. No, it's not. That's passive. It's passive aggressive. It's saying that, because it happens to be our status quo, that we're constantly rushing, constantly avoiding, constantly grasping, constantly doing whatever it is that we're doing, that it doesn't deserve to be looked at. When in fact, our tendencies, our behavioral tendencies, our thought tendencies absolutely deserve to be looked at. They need to be looked at. Because if we don't look at these tendencies, how on earth will we ever know what we need to change and what doesn't need to change? So we have to become the witness. Everybody in this room at some point in time have said, I want to change my life. Something about it, right? Anybody in here never say that? Most people would say, but I just don't know how. And that's actually not a correct statement. The first thing after saying, I want to change something in my life, the first statement after that, but I don't know what. I don't know what to change. And why don't you know what to change? Because you haven't looked at it. You haven't witnessed it. You've only judged yourself and said, I'm bad, or I'm good, or I could be better. But what does that mean? You know, those are just words. Well, I got angry and I yelled at somebody and I could do better. Okay, great. But have you witnessed your anger? Have you really sat with it? Or are you just appalled that something loud and obnoxious came out of your mouth? You know, did you just shock yourself into saying, oh my God, I got to change that? But you don't know what you have to change, because anger doesn't happen in a vacuum. Anger comes from someplace. It comes from many places. And unless we're willing to sit down and witness our own anger, we will never understand where it comes from. And if we don't understand where it comes from we don't understand its root cause, then how do we change it? You can pull the dandelion out as many times as you want to, but unless you get the root, what's going to happen? She's going to come back. And she's going to come back voraciously. So you have to witness in order to go to the root, to find out what the root even is. And in that witnessing, there's a lot of things that happen. In the witnessing, understanding occurs. And we recognize, oh, so I had a moment where, I yelled at somebody. Doesn't make me a bad person. It just means that those past impressions are creeping back in again. They're coming back in. Those past thoughts, ideas, experiences, traumas, that they still have some kind of a hold on me. And then you get to do the informed work of re-educating, of first uneducating, and then re-educating yourself according to how you have lived your life, how you are currently living and experiencing your life, and how you wish to live and experience your life. But you can't just make all these bold proclamations and expect there to be some kind of an uplifting outcome. You don't even know where those harmful tendencies are coming from. So on that really first very practical level, and that's a real practical level. And if you sit with me often, you know that I talk about everything on levels, because there's this very practical, approachable level. And that's something that pretty much everybody can identify with, is to say, in certain moments, more than not, we're not happy with the way things are in our own life. We want them to change. But we don't even know what that means. So become the witness so that you can pay attention and you can start understanding exactly what it is that you don't like. Well, I don't like that my partner doesn't talk to me very often. Okay, but if your partner talked to you more, you'd probably be just as irritated. Right? Because when we're not being spoken to, we want to be in conversation. And when we're in conversation, the tendency for almost every single human being is to not want to be in conversation. So it's actually not 100% the partner. There's something else at play there. Now, it could be, there could be issues in the relationship, but generally speaking, in an otherwise healthy relationship, it's just our own discontent. We just don't want things to be the way that they are. We want them to be different. And there's an underlying reason for that. And so we come into the place of witnessing in order to try to discover that underlying reason. And as we try to discover the underlying reason, we learn about ourselves. And we learn about ourselves in ways that allow us to grow, both into our discomfort and back out of it again. Because it's never fun to put the mirror up to the face. It's never fun to do that. It means that we have to accept a certain amount of self-responsibility, and that's never a fun thing. But at some point, what we actually find is that our expectation that self-responsibility is going to always be uncomfortable is incorrect. That at some point, that self-responsibility actually leads to a greater freedom. To be more responsible for the self and less responsible for what other people are doing. You know, when I in my own life, I say with my children, when my husband was still alive, with my husband, with my friends, with my coworkers, when I say, what role do I play in this? What is my responsibility? Then I have more freedom, because I don't have to concern myself so much with trying to find a way to place the blame. Instead, I can look within my own self and make change. Once I understand what change it is that needs to be made, perhaps I need to cultivate more patience. Perhaps I need to listen more consciously. And perhaps my tendency to avoid those things was based in an impression that no one ever taught me how. Or that nobody ever listened to me, so why should I listen to anybody else? Or just a tendency toward impatience because I'm constantly looking for excitement. So knowing a little bit about the root of where it comes from, the consequences that it has had, what our current expectations are, leads us to a place of greater freedom, because now we don't have to act so impulsively. I can say instead, well, you know what? I would like my relationships to be healthier, therefore I know that I have to change. I have to be the one. And in order to make that change and to make healthy, positive change, I have to know what change to make, so I become the witness again. And then I need to know if my work is efficable, if it's purposeful, so I become the witness again, so that I can accept radical responsibility and in the same moment also kind of stand outside of myself a little bit and pay attention to the new patterns I'm trying to put in place and ask myself, are these patterns useful? Does that make sense? Yeah. So the witness on kind of that first really practical level is you in your life, with your relationships with yourself, knowing what your tendencies are, knowing the root where those tendencies come from, because you didn't adopt 99.9% of the way you behave because you wanted to. It was all a survival mechanism. You know, it was, I'm receiving love when I behave like this, and I want to keep receiving love, so I'll keep behaving like this. Or, you know, I'm not getting the love that I need unless I behave this way, so I'll act out. We've been programmed. Most of our behavior is programmed. Who was it? His name just left me. He did the experiment, Pavlov's dogs, right? So the Pavlov's dogs experiment. Yeah, well, we're Pavlov's dogs, you know, for lack of a more eloquent way to put it. But it's the truth. And the more that we witness our life, the more that we see that. The more that we see, well, wow, I'm reacting out of a certain way because I'm worried about how I'm seen, how I'm spoken to. I'm worried about what I'm going to get in response or in return. Now imagine that you didn't have to behave that way. That you don't have to behave for the sake of what other people are or are not going to do. That you can actually take a breath, take a moment, take all the time you need, and decide for your own self, outside of those concerns, how you, in fact, are going to behave, so that your behavior aligns more fully with your soul, with your spirit, with who you are as a human being. It's not perfect. You're not going to get it perfect overnight. You're not going to get it perfect in this lifetime, but you can get it more and more and more, so that this process witnessing and learning and growing and changing and witnessing some more, so that this process leads you more and more and more into a deeper, more profound alignment with yourself, not with the expectations of others. And then that brings us to the next level of the witnessing, and the next level of the witnessing, which can happen at the same time also. But the next level is to say that a greater understanding of yourself leads you inevitably to a greater understanding of something else, divinity. We can call that nature. We can call that God, goddess. We can call that the magicalness of every moment. That once you start to have enough space within yourself from this radical self-responsibility, that these changes over time, we become more comfortable with them, and it has opened up space within us to be able to see other things. So now I can truly watch the sunset, watch the sunrise. Now I can truly listen to the person who is trying to converse with me. Now I can truly see, hear, taste, smell, touch in a way that allows me a deeper appreciation that all of this came from somewhere. And I can be awed by that. So the second level, if we were going to put it into levels of witnessing, is being in awe of what we see. Not just in judgment, but being in true awe. I was in awe yesterday. It's so silly. It really is, this example. But you know how sometimes, does anybody in here have an iPhone? Yeah. You know how sometimes when you open up your photos, it pops up a little video that it has made for you of like memories, right?
For you.
Yeah, exactly. So it popped up memories of 2024 or something. I don't know. And I don't usually ever watch them. You know, I took the pictures. I know what's there. But yesterday, for whatever reason, it caught my eye, and I just decided to open it up and watch it. And I'm sitting there looking at these pictures that it's showing me were representative of my 2024. And they're all amazing, beautiful, like sunsets, sunrises. And the one it ended with in Ireland was the picture of the horse next door and her foal running down the field alongside the stone fence that separates the properties. And it was so beautiful. It was just a moment where I was like, will you look at that? Like, there's this beautiful horse just enjoying the moment, and her baby with her running by her side. And I literally, like, tears were brought to my eyes thinking about this mama and her baby, and that moment, which I was gifted to witness, you know, just understanding the beauty, which then sent me into let's look at all the pictures. And of course, all the pictures are representative not only of the beauty, but also of the difficulty, the challenge, the struggle, you know? And I think that's why we like pictures so much, is because on some level they subconsciously remind us of the beauty, yes, but also of the struggle, of what it took us to get to a certain point, to a certain moment, to a certain experience. We don't think about it consciously usually. It's a subconscious thing. But if we could bring that to the conscious mind, if we could look at that picture and have a greater understanding of what it represents to us. You know, the foal is representative not only of the beautiful moment of it running down the field with its mama, but also the pain of giving birth, the pain of learning how to stand and how to walk and how to run, the pain of having to do that in a certain period of time after having been born in order to even survive. So that picture, that little video clip, is not only representative of some kind of majestic beauty, but it's also representative of all of the pain, the suffering, and the struggle that goes along with it. So on this second level, we start to see that. We start to recognize that there is this this dance, if you will, I'll be poetic about it, of this dance within our life, within the greater world, within every life, of struggle and ease, of pain and healing, of shadow and light. There's this dance, this back and forth for each and every one of us. And usually we're so tangled up in the concept of the dance as being inconvenient, impulsive, bad, good, you put a word like that to it, versus being divine. Even the pain is divine. Even the pain is divine. Because if there hadn't been the pain of birth, that little foal would have never had the joy of running up and down that field with his mama. If you had never had pain in your life, you would not know how to enjoy it. So we come to a deeper appreciation through this practice of witnessing, where we're like, yeah, of course there's pain and suffering, because there's also healing and beauty. And of course there's healing and beauty because there is pain and suffering. See, we're creatures of opposition. We live in a world, in a universe of opposites. And that's how we understand things. It's how we rationalize. We say, well, it's nighttime, therefore I must go to sleep. It's dark out. We say it's daytime, therefore I must work because there's light. We look at things and we categorize them based on what they are opposite to. But imagine that you can just step away from that for a minute. Just for a moment. It doesn't have to be permanent. And you can just see things for what they are without the tendency to categorize them as good, bad, light, dark. Big, small, yes, no. But to just be present to it. It would bring something very special to life. It really does. And so the more that we have this like second level experience of witnessing, we really do come into a deep place of awe. And to some people, they might look from the outside and be like, man, that person's a little strange, because they're in awe of everything, like every tree and every flower and every smile and every child and every foal running with its mother, you know? And it's like, oh my gosh, that person is like seeing life through rose-colored glasses. And it's like, no, they're seeing life. They're seeing life. And from that point, they enter into, and it can happen at the same time too. So it's not like these are not like, hard and fast separations. They overlap one another. But the third level of witnessing, which is a level that very few people achieve in this life. And that's the level of seeing God everywhere, seeing Goddess everywhere, in everything, in every moment. The individual who achieves that level of witness is probably a saint, a living, walking saint. Somebody who has such a deep awareness and understanding of divinity that it separates it from nothing. It doesn't separate it out from birth or death or from anything that happens in between. Sees everything as God, and God is everything. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about this. And the Devi Mahatmya, the Devi Mother talks about this. They say, the one who wishes to be happy will see me in everything and everything in me, without exception. It will recognize that divine consciousness is all of it. All of it. And for some, initially, that's like a really woo-woo statement. It's like, well, no, God is good, the devil is bad. And it's like, no, there's not really a devil in this tradition. There's demons, but they're your own, They're your ego. They're what your ego drives you to do. They're the judgments and the jealousy and the envy and the violence. Those are the demons. God is everything. God is even those tendencies. Why? Because that divine consciousness that is divinity, and by God I don't mean masculine or feminine, it's just a placeholder for that, which is neither male or female, masculine or feminine. And at the same point, it's both. But, it's to say that divine consciousness is everything, everywhere. It's the beauty of the forest as it has grown, and it's the storm that comes by and wipes that forest out, knocking down its trees. And it doesn't come as the storm personally to knock down the trees, because that would be hurting itself on purpose. It's free will. It's that at some point in time, oh Lord, that's a long conversation. I'll just shorten it real quick and say, we've been given free will. So we when we don't exercise our free will, we think we do, but we really don't. Not very often anyway. We've been given free will, and so divinity doesn't mess with that. Divine consciousness, if it were to be a personality, it would not say, well, I'm going to move you here and you here and you here like pieces on a chessboard. No. It says, you've all got free will. What you going to do with it? Well, I'm going to sit over here in my corner and complain because I don't like the way things are. And I'm going to sit over here in my corner and I'm going to blame because I don't want the responsibility. And I'm going to sit over here in my corner and I'm going to steal. And I'm going to sit over here in my corner and I'm going to be violent. And I'm going to sit over here in my corner and I'm just going to be a doormat, a people pleaser. I'm going to sit over here in my corner and I'm going to practice love. I'm going to sit over here in my corner and I'm going to explore truth. I'm going to sit over here in my corner and I'm going to explore compassion and see how I can bring more of that into my life. Free will. You have the right to choose what you're going to do with this life. Well, do I really though? Because there is that programming. Yeah, but if you know you're programmed, then you can unprogram to some degree. Not completely, but to some degree. If you accept the idea that you have been programmed in large part, then in some way, shape, or form, you can undo some of that. You can make yourself more open, more accessible to other possibilities. Does that make sense? Yeah. It's like, what is it? Is it AA that says, first you have to know there's a problem, right? First you got to acknowledge there's a problem. So first we have to acknowledge, I've been programmed. It's not shameful. It's just the truth. Every time you drive down Route 12 or 22 or 222 or any of them, and you see those billboards, each one of those billboards is programming you. It's telling you what to buy, how to look, who to be. Try driving down Route 12 and not look at them. Don't take in the message, the subtle message that they're sending you. And if you find that you are looking at them, because you will, because they're there and they're blatant and they're bold, and even researchers found this out a long time ago. Do you know that in the early days of television, they used television as a programming tool? That they would actually have advertisements that would flash very quickly on the screen that you couldn't pick up consciously. Like you didn't know it was happening, but your subconscious saw it. That's how fast these flashes would be. And just imagine that. All the flashes that you experience every day, from the subtle words that someone by the water cooler is speaking, that you're not really listening to, but you're hearing anyway, to the billboards that you're driving by that you're not looking at, but you're seeing them anyway, to the foods that, you're not really eating, but you're ingesting them, to all of the senses, to the person who brushes past you and doesn't touch you, but still has touched you in some way, shape, or form, right? The senses are so powerful. So now imagine that you can have more control over your senses through your free will. You can acknowledge, number one, these things are happening. Pay attention to it for a little while and see how those subtle messages are being received by you. Understand a little bit about the way that the world interacts with you. And then, knowing that, start making different choices for yourself. Start investigating if your choices are truly your own. Or if you went and bought that beautiful scarf because you liked the way those particular earth colors looked on the model in the picture in the magazine or on the billboard or somewhere. Does that make sense? Like even color coordination. I remember this one time I saw this really beautiful blanket for sale. I have a thing with blankets. I love blankets, like throw blankets. Absolutely love them. Brittany knows. She sees my pile all the time. And this I think it was a Navajo blanket, but it had those colors. It had like that earthy, tawny color with a little bit of a cream, and there was there was almost a light turquoise blended through it, and that color scheme left an impression on me. And sometime years later, I saw something that reminded me of it and bought it because it reminded me of it. Not because I liked the thing that I bought, but because the impression was so strong about those particular colors with that blanket, which I didn't buy, by the way, that I still, years later, was looking for that same object to acquire, and so got a substitute for it. What are your substitutes that you buy into day in and day out that are actually just leftover impressions from the past? They're not actually even things that you really want anymore. Is that making sense? Yeah. But you won't know those things until you step into the role of witnessing. That first role, that very practical role of saying, when you go to the supermarket, and you're getting your essentials, and we all do this, Lord knows I do it. So I spent a lot of time in Ireland. And in Ireland, they don't give you bags at the grocery store. You have to bring your own. They do not give you bags. They will sell bags there. They're like €1 a piece, which is a little bit more than $1 in US terms. So you can buy them, but who wants to, then you have to do something with them, right? Learned that really quick. So I'll go to the store and I'll be like, well, I'm just going to get the essentials. I'm just going to get like one container of oat milk and, one other thing I might need. And pretty soon, I'm looking for the little cart. And then I've got 12 to 14 things in my cart that I am not going to be able to carry out with my two hands. And I'm looking at them and I'll say, why am I getting those? Well, I'm getting the what are they called? I'm getting the proper chips because I can remember the first time I had them and the flavor and the taste of them and the crunch that they had. They're like French fries, but they're chips because they're Irish. So I'm getting those based on a past impression that I would like to repeat. And why am I getting the ice cream? Why am I getting the oat milk ice cream thing? Well, because chocolate is an impression that I continually visit in my life. Are these things that I need? No, they're not. These are things that the mind, the ego, is holding on to because of past impressions. And so then, I don't always, but every once in a while I'll find myself putting stuff back, because I'm like, well, I want to break myself free of that impression to some small degree. And then I'll walk out of the store and I'll either feel like I've conquered something in a moment, or I'll feel like, darn, I should have got the proper chips, But that's part of the process. So you have a laughter about it. You've accepted responsibility. You've learned something about yourself. You've learned two really valuable things. Number one, my impressions of the past still drive me. Absolutely they do. And number two, they don't have to, because I put this thing back on the shelf and I didn't buy it. And now I'm going to deal with the thought in my mind, well, I could have had the proper chips while I was watching this movie, and then you can look at that and see how strong those impressions are. They're so strong. But in order to have any of that, you have to be willing to be a witness in your own life for your own self. And the interesting thing is that never once does this tradition, as far as I'm aware, in my humble experience of it, never once does this tradition tell you to come into being the witness so that you can point the finger of shame and blame, name calling, critical judgment. No. It doesn't tell you that. It doesn't say use your free will so that you can look at other people and put them below or above you. No. It says come into the role of witnessing so that you can understand yourself better. And in understanding your own struggles better, then you have compassion for all. Having compassion for all doesn't mean inviting their drama into your world. That's not what that means. It means understanding the struggle and understanding that every single person you see is struggling. It doesn't matter who they are, how much they've irritated you, how much they've hurt you. Those things are accessory to the fact that they are struggling. They're struggling. They're suffering. Because people who are healthy and not suffering don't hurt other people. Not in violent, purposeful ways. Is that, yeah? So that first level of witnessing, really super practical and potentially the hardest of the three levels, because it really asks us to take off the mask well, I know myself. It's like, okay. How much of yourself on a scale of 1 to 100 do you think you know? And most people would say, 70 to 80%. Some people might say, oh, I know myself like 90%. And very few people would say less than 10%. But those very few people would be the most accurate people. They would be the ones who were telling a little bit more of the truth than those of us who wish to hide behind the idea that we know what we're doing and why we're doing it. And we're just going to keep on keeping on because, hey, it's not working for us yet. So, but we think it is, or we hope it will. I don't know. It's a little crazy, but then eventually that leads us into that second level where we start experiencing some kind of awe, some kind of intrigue, interest, curiosity is piqued. And we're like, wow, there really is something to this. There really is something to this. And sometimes it's darn uncomfortable. So uncomfortable. But we become less afraid of what happens if I put this away, and more inspired by, I wonder what will happen. I wonder what life will be like without these crutches, without these tendencies, or at least with less of them, We become inspired. We become inspired to understand other people better. And instead of looking and shaming and blaming, we look and we see more. We recognize. I had a client many years ago who came to me because they were having issues in their relationship. And I knew this person fairly well, and I knew their partner fairly well. And I suggested to them that they come into this practice of just witnessing. Just witnessing. And that every time that their partner did something that irritated them, did something contrary to what they told them to do, breathed even, that they would look and say silently to themselves, look how hard they're trying. to just live. Look how hard they're trying. And they initially, the person looked at me and said, that ain't going to happen. And I said, why not? He said, well, because the only thing they're trying hard to do is irritate me. And I said, but what if they're not? What if that's your mother talking? What if that's your father talking? What if that's your friend talking? I mean, how many times have you heard your mother or your father or your friend say about their partner, they're just trying to irritate me. They're breathing too loud. And that phrase caught on and has now become some way that you define your relationship, that you haven't even thought about it. You haven't even looked at it because you're still so entangled that you don't have space to think it could be something else. That particular phrase, look at how hard they are trying, creates space. A space for appreciation. A space where you don't have to be so bogged down by the instantaneous judgmentality that we all suffer under when it comes to looking at other people. And maybe then at some point you get to see that that person actually is struggling. That they have just as many insecurities as you do. That they suffer the same as you do. That they don't understand themselves and their wants and their hopes and their dreams. And they're afraid that life is passing them by and that they're going to die before they accomplish anything, just like you are afraid of that. Eventually we see that the irritation comes from the place of them being a mirror of our own self, of our own fear, of our own sense of inadequacy, of our own story. When instead what we want them to be is some other version that is attractive to us. This is across the board. We want something from our partner, from our friend, from our parent, from our child. We want them to show us that there is something more than the suffering. So when we see them suffering, it's inconvenient and irritating to us. Does that make sense? Yeah. So basically what we're saying to them is, I'm already suffering. I don't want to see anybody else's suffering. Show me that you can be happy, then I think that maybe I can be happy too. Doesn't work that way. If you want to be happy, you have to find a way to be happy. If you want to be content, peaceful, then you have to find a way within your own self without depending upon anybody else as the crutch. Anybody else as the reason, anybody else as the inspiration. Because they're going through the same crap you're going through. The same rigmarole, the same suffering, the same insecurities. So how can they show you? They can't. They're not even sure they can show themselves. You have to show you. And the only way that you can show yourself an honest path is by witnessing. Seeing more, not less. Opening up your perspectives. Opening up your view. So what thoughts or questions do you have at this point? No? None? No reflections? No questions? Okay, let me do a time check. Oh, good. So a lot of times when people talk about Sakshi, when they talk about witnessing, the first place that they go to is witnessing the revelation of divinity everywhere and in all things. And, I talk about that too, but it's not the first place that I go. Because 99.999% of people can't even begin to grip that. Like, it's too big. It's too different. It's too much. Or they do grab hold of it And then they think that they can go from here to that without doing everything in between. And that's what we can call spiritual bypassing. Spiritual bypassing has lots of levels and layers to it. And one of them is the avoidance of the necessary work. So we're not going to, potentially open our eyes tomorrow when we wake up and be transformed into an all-knowing being who can witness and see God everywhere. You're still going to get angry. You're still going to get upset. You're still going to see something that you think is unjust and react to it. You're going to see something that you think you want and you're going to go for it. You're still going to be a reactive human being because that's what we are. So instead of starting at that top point, which I do think is a very important thing to be aware of, we say, but we do need to address the levels that come before it. And then, as we're addressing that kind of first level of witnessing more and just kind of conforming less, we can be struck with beautiful inspirations, have epiphanies of divinity in different moments as we're going along. And we can know that the more that we practice witnessing, the more of those epiphanies we'll have. Until the epiphany is the only truth. The realization, the understanding, the witnessing of divinity in action is all there is. You see God everywhere and in all things. And you know that everything is going to resolve itself. It's all going to resolve itself. Because nothing in this material world is permanent. Not a thing. We had an engineer come in because we're going to be putting solar up on the rooftop. We're trying to make this building very sustainable. And so he's walking through, he's like, she's a sturdy building, man. She'll be here. And I looked at him, I said, for as long as she's here. And he's like, yeah, he goes, but she's got some power to her. I said, yeah, she does. I said, but you don't know about the leaks in the other room, And I said, nothing is permanent. Nothing, and not even this building. She's not permanent. If she gets another 100 years, that'll be great. But eventually she'll be replaced by something else. Everything in life is like that. Everything. Nothing is permanent. So don't hold on so much. Don't hold on. Let go of your grip a little bit more. And in letting go of your grip a little bit more, maybe you'll see and witness a little bit more of the things that you're actually shutting out in favor of that flashing sign, in favor of past impressions. Can you imagine right now, just take a moment and think, what could you possibly be not experiencing in your life right now because you're so attached to the past impressions? I'm sure there's something. Yeah. If you just let go of that impression a little bit, it would be scary. It'd be like diving into the deep end. It'd be a little scary. But eventually you would see you don't need to rely on past impressions. Not to the extent that you do. It's good to know not to put your hand in the fire, because when you were a child, you put your hand in the fire and you burned your hand. That's a good, useful thing to know, But when you learned how to be defensive and reactive to every single thing that was said to you, you don't need that. Somebody says hello to you, they're just saying hello. Somebody looks at you, they're not looking at you with some ulterior motive, But how many times have we done that as human beings, where we're walking through the store or we're sitting on a train and somebody glances at us and immediately our mind goes, what are they looking at? And that's based in something. That's based in a past experience that we had where we learned how to be defensive. We learned how to make assumptions like that. What would life be like if we didn't make those assumptions, or we made them less? Maybe we would open up ourselves to more kindness. Wouldn't that be something? More kindness. Holy crap. I don't know. I think the world could use some of that today. More kindness. Less defensiveness. Let's start by witnessing. Start in little ways. Next time you go to the store to do grocery shopping and you go to grab something on the shelf that you don't need, ask yourself why? Where does this come from? Where does this come from? And just explore that for a moment. You don't have to have an absolute answer, but explore it for a moment. Gather a little bit of information. Why do I grab the Doritos? Why do I grab the ice cream? Why do I grab whatever it is I grab? Why do I grab that brand of bread? Why do I grab the push cart and not the handheld one? Why do I grab the closest possible parking spot? When was I taught that? When was I taught that it's just too damn inconvenient to park at the back of the parking lot and actually walk to the store from there? When did I learn that? Start with those questions about your own behaviors and see what you find out. And at some point along the way, if it's possible, and it is, but when it happens for you, at some point along the way, recognize that the more that we hold on to these past impressions, to the programming, to the fear, to those types of things, the less we're able to see divinity, the less we're able to see the beauty of the beauty and the beauty of the struggle. The more we grasp, the less we're able to see the purposefulness of everything. And just enjoy the process. Yeah?
I have a question about the role of the witness, particularly when a person is trying to fulfill more than one role, like as a teacher or as a parent, and so you're going to be able to become the witness and ask these questions. It's like right thought, but eventually you're going to have to choose right speech or right action. And you're going to, I think the power of reminding yourself to be a witness is like, do you really want to say notice me right now? Or can are you recognizing with awe, like the holiness of the moment? But then there are times where you are, when do you trust your own authority to speak and act when you see something that you witness, and when do you let it go? Is it only when you're being angered, or is it like it's about authority and legitimacy in that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And so I'll start off by saying that most of the time we're not speaking from authority. We're not speaking from knowing. Most of the time we're just reacting, and we're reacting out of fear. And that's fine. Just know that you're doing it. Just know that you're doing it. And if you're going to continue doing it, just own it. That's all. There's every tradition has its rules of behavior. The 10 Commandments. There's the 10 observances in Islam, and I think it's the 10th one that is be straight. And what is straight? Straightforward. Straightforward is to say what you see and to know that you are the one seeing it. Therefore, whatever you're seeing is automatically discolored by whatever past you have, whatever impressions you carry. But that doesn't mean that it's not legitimate. If I say, I see that blue chair, and that blue chair is blue, I know that I am looking at that chair and calling it blue. But I also understand that you could look at that chair and call it teal, Somebody else could look at that chair and call it green. Somebody else could look at that chair and call it something else. Somebody else could look at that chair and say it's ugly. Somebody could look at that chair and say it's beautiful. So it's recognizing that when I look at something and I'm saying what I see, that I'm saying what I see, and that I'm understanding that others might see it differently. But that does not invalidate what I see. Then we look at the yoga tradition, where we have the yamas and the niyamas. It's pretty straightforward. They use one word, for most of these things. Ahimsa, non-harming. Satya, truthfulness. Asteya, non-stealing. So you see somebody, lifting a wallet out of a pocketbook, and it's not their pocketbook because it belongs to somebody else. Straightforward. That wallet does not belong to you. You could follow it up with a question, do you have permission? Or you could say to the person who you believe the wallet belongs to, excuse me, but you should check for your wallet because I believe that somebody might have just taken it. But here's the catch. Hey, did you see that little son of a... He just went into your bag and took... If I were you, I'd call the cops right now and just get him taken care of, throw his ass in jail. That's not straightforward. That's inflammatory. Straightforward is, I think that somebody might have just taken your wallet from what I saw, so you might want to check. So it's a difference in what we say. And it matters. It matters. Think about like the way people talk around a water cooler. Talk about inflammatory, right? Well, so-and-so is always putting files on my desk, and so-and-so is always talking about so-and-so, and da-da-da-da-da-da. There's nothing straightforward there. It's just a bunch of drama. And it's a bunch of drama that doesn't do anything for anybody. It has no purpose to it except to upset and to feed into more drama. That's the only purpose that it has. And somebody else, I had another person that I worked with who that was a client of mine. And they were having these issues at work. And they said, I can't stand it because the water cooler is like right by my desk. And I said, well, have you tried changing the conversation? Let's do a little experiment. The next time that everybody is huddled around the water cooler talking about somebody negatively, why don't you go and change the subject? And she's like, well, how am I supposed to do that? And I said, well, change the subject. You don't want to talk about that. What do you want to talk about? So she tried it. And initially it didn't go over well. Initially it didn't go over well at all. As a matter of fact, one of her coworkers came back to her and said something like, every time that we're in conversation, you come and change the subject. Are we just not good enough for you to talk to? And I just left her with that for a moment. And then I asked her to repeat it. And she did. And I said, well, do you see the mistake there? And she's like, I'm not sure. I said, well, this person is saying to you, every time we're talking, you come and change the subject. Are we not good enough for you to talk to? So this person thinks that the only value that they hold is to draw you into drama, when what you're asking for is to actually hear them, to hear their authentic self outside of all of the blah, 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 blah. So your response to that can be, yes, I do want to talk to you. I want to talk to you. I want us to talk to each other. But that doesn't have to be putting down Joe in accounting or talking about the latest, drama of Jane in whatever office, or that's not talking to you. That's talking about others. But what I would like to do is talk to you. That's straightforward. So, am I answering your question a little bit? Yeah. So the straightforwardness lends authenticity to us. Because when we're straightforward, we're kind of tearing away the layers that are not needed. Now, parenting, it's so important in parenting to be straightforward. And I'm guilty as a parent too. I try really hard not to do it with my grandkids, but you don't really have to do it with your grandkids. But with your own kids, right? It's not every time that you come home with a bad test, you do this every single time, when are you ever going to learn? You don't need all of that. That's not straightforward. That's just rolling in the drama, the mud of the drama. Oh my God, get rid of that. Kid comes home with a poor grade. Okay, how are we going to solve this? What support do you need that you're not already receiving? Straightforward. And in doing that, we teach them how to be straightforward. How to ask the question and search for the solution versus just get caught up in the complaining. Straightforward. I love that. I do. I think it's the 10th practice in the list in Islam. Straight. Be straight. Yeah. Great question. Any other ones before we end for today? We're good? Okay. Let's sit tall. Close the eyes. Just be straight. Be the witness. Pay attention on purpose to more and more moments. Otherwise, you'll be absent from them. Draw the hands together in front of the heart. We'll lift our voices in one Om and the All Beings mantra. Take a breath in. Om. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Om shanti shanti shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Now and always honoring your light and the light of all beings everywhere. Om peace, peace, peace. Thank you all so much for being here today. Thank you. And remember, don't look for some perfect version of yourself amidst, your spiritual path, because that's just too full of egoic tendency. You're not looking for some perfect version. You're just looking for greater understanding. The kind of understanding that cultivates compassion and empathy, that allows you to love and be loved, that allows you to look out at this life with less complaining and more gratitude. You're just looking to learn. You're not looking to be perfect. No such thing. Yeah? Okay. Enjoy the day. Thank you.